Okay. A short note on what we asked the question last week. This is about the mitzvah simcha, mitzvah say nun daled, simcha yontiv. The Ram quotes the posik, "Zvach l'shomim v'chalta lifnei Hashem elokecha," which is the posik in Har Evel, and Har Evel is based on Rosh Hashanah. And the Ram says that a Rosh Hashanah can't be a minyan mitzvahs. So we pointed out that Chazal quote this pasuk in that Bisman Shebeis Hamikdash means Simcha. The Ram himself quotes it later, Simcha L'Babosa, and Ben Beseira quotes it that Zvicha B'Shas Simcha. And then we pointed out also that you find similar things in the Mizbech with the Avonim that you made that we learn out of son of Aleim Bazel, which a lab does come over the Zohar, quotes a lab, and Avodim Shleimo is Tim the base Mizbech Hashem Elokecha, and that Mizbech was a Rosh Shah, and Shlosh Shlishi says all this thing has nothing to do with Minyan Mitzvahs. So I thought about it, and I don't think it's a question at all, because there's no Kabbalah to say that if you have a mitzvah l'shah, the Rebbeinu Shalom can't tell you biyachad certain things which are also l'deres. In other words, if the Matiki Ashmur quote lavim from the parsha, it means that these lavim are the deires, because the Gemara quotes it that it was negayah to the Chashmonoim mizbeach sheshokshel yavonim. That's why they had to build a new mizbeach, because the lav is son of Aleim Bazel, and Avodim Shleimus Tivnes Mizbach Hashem Elokecha. Similarly over here in the pasuk was there, it's actually mitzvahs, and part of the parsha is part of the parsha tells you that even though the etzim the etzim mizbeach and the avonim were Rosh Hashanah, but the dinim, which were the mitzvahs which was said in conjunction with it, it might be mitzvah l'deres. If Matiki Ashmur say that it's l'deres. Similarly over here, that even though the Direi Simcha, which was said in Har Evo, were a shah, because the whole Mizbech in Har Evo was a Rosh Hashanah, but that you learn that Simcha is Liboso, or that you could learn Simcha the B'Shas Zvicha, that's not, that's not a problem, because there's no, it doesn't mean that everything in the parsha is the shah, but the etzim mitzvah of Mizbech v'ha'evel was certainly her shah, and and all the dinim of the avonim and the sid, which were also there, is also a shah. But that the Mizbeach, Leson of and Basel, and Avonim Shleimus, that could be L'deres. Okay, now, I just want to pick up the second part of this mitzvah of Simchas Yontif, which is very intriguing. There's a new aspect of this mitzvah. V'koilel b'yomroi v'samachta b'chagecho. The Rambam's Mechadish, there's another part of this mitzvah, besides Hakrovus Shalmei Simcha, which the Gemara discusses in Chagiga. There's a mitzvah Sameach B'nei Beisai V'dvorim Aruim Lahem. And I think we pointed out already last week. I'm just going to take part of it because we're going to have to go on. That that we shouldn't disagree with the Rambam, and they take that they take a position that the all the of simcha she'ein beis hamikdash kaim shlo bizman beis hamikdash is only the Rabbanon. It's koilo or bichlal omrei or bichlal that it's included in this mitzvah. The Rambam here and also Mishnah Torah bring the two mitzvahs simcha. There's a mitzvah. The first mitzvah is Basa Kochim in the Mikdash and Yerushalayim, as the Ram says here, and the Ram also says in Hilchos Chagiga Perek Aleph Aloch Aleph and Perek Beis Aloch Yud. And the second mitzvah is Kol Minei Simcha, is Achilles Chulin, which is Sameach, which is Mesamachas, which is not limited to necessarily to Mikdash Yerushalayim. And that the Ram calls in Hilchos Yontif. V'chayiv odem perek be'ivov aloch yizayin yidches v'chayiv odem liyois bohen someach v'tov leiv shenema v'samachta b'chagecho v'af al pi, I'm skipping a little bit, v'af al pi she'asimcho hamur kan he kol ben shlom, because that's pshuta shamiko, that's the ikar mitzvah, kamo she'onu meva'arin b'ilchos chagiga, and that's why he quotes it in the Protei Mitzvahs in Hilchos Chagiga. Yesh b'chlal oisa mitzvah simcha l'smoyach mitzvah tvela kol echa v'echa b'roi loi v'chulei v'anoshim oichlin bosa v'sheis in yayin she'ein simcha l'babosa v'ein simcha l'bayayin. So the question is, it's true that the Rambam has two chalokim in this mitzvah. The question is, how does it happen? If the pasuk v'samachta means a shchitas kochim with achilas b'sar shlomim, how do you have another aspect of anoshim b'roim lehem and noshim b'roim lehem and talim b'roim lehem? So the simple answer to this is the Momoy Cotton on Yudal Beis. It's just a flip, the same way the Ram learns that Avelis is the Raisa. In general, even though we shouldn't disagree with the Rambam and the Rif, he also learns that the mitzvah's Simcha Bisman is the Raisa. Because the Gemara in Yudal Beis is talking about that Simchas Yontiv is Mavatal Avelus, and the Gemara says Yudal Beis Oseh Aseh Rabim, which is Simchas Yontiv, V'dochi Aseh Dioch, which is Avelus. It means one deraisa is durch another deraisa. And Tosis flips it. It says both of the Rabbanim, but according to the Rambam, both of the deraisa. The Rambam is clearly that Avelus is deraisa in Hilchos Ovo Perek Aleph Aloch Aleph and Aseh Lamed Zayin. Mitzvah Avelus doesn't depend upon Beis Hamikdash Kaim, this is the whole portion. So you can ask, how is the mitzvah Simcha Bisman Hazeh durch the mitzvah Avelus, which is certainly the Reisa Bisman Hazeh. So because of this, the Ram is Mechadesh that not only not only here, but also Mishnah Torah, that the mitzvah Simcha the Reisa Gam Bisman Hazeh. So we understand where the Ram got it from and what forced them. But, question, how does it work? How do you get two aspects to one mitzvah? The mitzvah simcha in Torah Shebeksav is very clear that it's Basa Shlomim, which is Pshuta Shalmika, and we find that the Pshuta Shalmika is Basa Kochim, and those dinim are explained in Hilchos Chagiga. But there's a drasha, but that which is learned from a drasha, which is mechlal, would call mene simcha, achilas chulin, not kochim, v'dovo goyloi. And that's a drasha. And that drasha is b'chal the mitzvah, but the Ika mitzvah, in other words, you can have a mitzvah in Torah Shebeksav, and you can mechadish a new aspect of the mitzvah through midrash Chazal. And this is found in the midrash Tanoim L'Dvorim, Dvorim Tezayin Yudal, Dova Acher, V'samachta b'chagecho, b'chol minei simcha, mikan omu, Chayvul l'samech b'no b'nei beisrik b'regel b'ma mesamchon b'yayin. Rabbi Yehuda b'seiron b'zman shebeizik mishkayin simcha l'basa shem v'zlach l'shlomim v'achalta shom. Achshov ein simcha l'b'yayin shenema v'yayin salulav enosh. And this is very similar to what we have in the Sifri, L'Gabi Bikurim, because the Sifri says in Kisavoy, says, V'samachta b'chol minei smachos. B'chol minei smachos. By Simchas Bikurim. Interesting. Kol minei smachos. Now, and the Ram learns the Pshuta Shomika of a Samachta B'chagecho is B'shalmei Simchas, B'shalmei Simcha. So that's what he writes in Hilchos Chagiga, that the Simcha Amur B'Golim. He says, V'Simcha Shene'emar V'Samachta B'Chagecho V'chulei V'Simcha Ho'amurim B'Golim V'Simcha Ho'amur B'Golim He Sheyakiv Shlomim Yesal Shalmei Chagiga. This is Pshuta Shomiko. That's the Elohim Anikoim Shalmei Simcha Chagiga Shalmei Yisrael. Oh, the Ram says a Chagiga. That's the pasuk. But the idea of Kol Minei Smachos is only a drasha, and that's the Ram writes Michlal, both here and in Hilchos Yontif he says Michlal. You have Hibakil, that's the way Ibn Tibbon has it, but both Ibn Eov and Kapach have B'chlal Omroi v'samach b'recha ma she'omo gam kein samech b'chol minei simcha. And that's the pshat in the Rambam Hilchos Yontif in Perek Zayin, Halacha Yud Zayin, v'chayiv odem liyois bohen somech v'toiv leiv, v'chulei, shenema v'samachta b'chagecho, af al pi shesimcha mu'kan, he korban shlomim, k'mo she'onu miva'arin, b'hilchus chagiga, yesh b'chlal, oisa simcha, l'smoyachu bon l'bnei beisai, kol echod v'echod b'roiloi. Yesh b'chlal, it's b'chlal. And that's Afal Pi, the Pshuta Shomiko, and then there's b'chlal. You find a similar thing the Rambam does in Loisase Memhei, in Minyan HaMitzvos. There's a lot of kocho, of krech, almei srita. The Rambam says, "V'hinei omru, omru, shebechlal lav zeh gam kein, u'aso mechilek botei dinei ho'ir b'minogeim." One city has two minhagim, like every city in Klal Yisrael, which it's a lav, I don't know. Dinei b'ir b'minogeim v'chiluf v'kibutzim v'omru lo'isisgoydedu. Leisasu agudus agudus. Ava gufei dekor pshuta shomika. This is only a drasha. Hinehu kmo shebiru v'yomu leisasu chabu alameis. V'zehu kmo drash. The b'chlal is like a drash, and the gufei dekor, the pshuta shomika, that is the Ika Mitzvah. Now, I suggest that the nafkamina is the Gabi Malkus, and it's only Malkus of Pshuti Shemiko, not a drosha. And therefore, the Ram says in Mishnah Torah, he only loike for Srita Alameis and not for Agudus Agudus. The Ram, because over the Zohar, Perek Yud Beis, Halacha Yud Daled, and also in Minyan HaMitzvos, you find a similar type of idea in Loisa Kufayin Tes, V'nei Omu in Baal Shaksu, Gam Kain, the Gemara Makis, he learns in Sefer HaMitzvah, it's a Deraisa. Hamashe in the Kovov, Oiva Mishum Baal Shaksu, is a Deraisa. Someone who holds himself not to use the facilities. Hamash in the Kovov, Oiva Mishum Baal Shaksu. And the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvos is a Deraisa. Ki ma ze, ki kol ze muzho mimenu, aval eino chayiv olav malchus. Bavur ki pashte dekra u b'sheretz levad. Since it's not pshuta shomikra, it's only drosha, there's no malchus. In Mitzvah Aseh, you don't have the parallel, but it's a similar thing that the goof of the claw over here, that's what you see. Afal pisha simcho amur kan ikom shlo k'moshe onam yesh b'chlal oisa simcho l'smoyach, and that is the b'chlal, and that's the drosha. And that's Hilchos Hagiga. Vasimcha Amur Bרגלים, he shlomim yesal. That's the Simcha Amur Bater. That's the goof with the car. And here it's only B'chlal. Next. Umizeh. That is both. Ibn Tibin and Ibn Eov, but Kapach is a better translation, at least from the text itself, in terms of the flow of the text, Mehen, because it says kol minei simcha, and he's listing mehen lecho bosa biyom tovim v'lishtos yayin v'ruboish begodim chadoshim u'lechalik peris u'minei mesika l'ktanim u'lenoshim. The various things that dvorim are going lehen. That's what he quotes. Now, okay. Now, so this discussion is the same thing, the Ika mitzvah, and that's really the mitzvah minyan mitzvahs. That's the minyan, has to do with the Ika mitzvah, which is Shalmei Simcha, and there's a drash, and which is not Pshuta Shomikah, even though it's a draisa, it's only Michlal, and according to Shiur Sheni, it wouldn't have been a minyan mitzvahs, but once you have a mitzvah, you can throw in the drash and say that it's part of it. But the drash by itself, it's only Michlal. And therefore, the Prote mitzvahs, the Ram quotes, the mitzvah Simcha Hilchos Chagiga, not in Hilchos Yontiv, because the Gufi, the core, is in Hilchos Chagiga, and the drasha is in Hilchos Yontiv. Tosis disagrees, and Tosis' opinion is that the whole Simcha Bizman Hazeh is only the Rabbanon. Tosis in Moikotten, Yudal and Mebeis, Masra say the Yochid. Tosis' opinion is that Avelis is the Rabbanon, and Simcha Bizman Hazeh is the Rabbanon, and Shema Yisrael. So there's no problem. Now, just want to show you a list or examples of the differences between the mitzvahs Simcha, which is Gufi the Kor, and the mitzvah Simcha, which is the Drosha. The mitzvah, which is Gufi the Kor, is a very limited mitzvah. It's Achilas Basa Kochim only. And the mitzvah Simcha, that's Michlal, is all Dover Shedachu Sameach. Anoshim Beloy Lehen and the Chule B'chule. And you don't need Achilas Basa Kochim, and it's only Michlal, and those are the Dinim L'chus Yontif. Also, they'll call the Miktosh, according to what he says over here. Now, the mitzvah, this is the most interesting one. The mitzvah of Gufa the Kor is only in Gimel Golem. There's no mitzvah Simchas Yontif on Rosh Hashanah. There's no. It's not a regel. No alila regel. No No reason to be in the base of Mikdash. You have to makiv korban shlomim. However, the mitzvah simcha, which is a mechlal, certainly includes Rosh Hashanah. Look at the Rambam, and I want to prove it to you. Look at the Rambam in Hilchos Yontif, in Perek Vov Halacha Yud Zayin. Shivas Yomim, Shivas Yimei HaPesach, U'Shmonos Yimei HaChag, Im Shar Yom Tovim, V'chulei. Again, Shivas Yimei HaPesach, U'Shmonos Yimei HaChag. So you have everything about Pesach and everything about Sukkot, including Shmini Atzeres. Shmonos Yimei HaChag. V'Shar Yom Tovim. What do you mean Shar Yom Tovim? There's only one other one. What do you mean two? So it means that it's not enough to say Shavuos, you have to say something else. So you must be talking about Rosh Hashanah. And also, you find this in Ilchos Chanukah, that there's both the simcha both by Rosh Hashanah and by Yom Kippur. Look at Hilchos Chanukah Perek Gimel Halacha Vov. Avol b'Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim ein bohen Hallel lefi shehein yimei tshuva v'yira ufachad lo yimei simcha yisera. So it means they're not yimei simcha yisera, but they are yimei simcha. Both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And Hallel requires yimei simcha yisera. Next, the Mishnah in Moikot and Perek Gimel Mishnah Vov, Rav Gamliel Oimer, Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim k'Regolim. So Rav Gamliel says that there's no Avelis. Both Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur Mavatal Shiva. And that the Ram Paskins in Hilchos Avon Perek Yud Halacha Gimel Ha'Golim v'chein Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim ein dover midivri avelis noeg bohen v'chol hakoyves meisoi afilu sho achas koydem haregel o koydem Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim botla mimenu gzeira shiva. And the pshat is that even though the gufei bekra, the pshuto shel mikra is only gimel gol v'samachta b'chagecha, but the drosha which is mechlal applies to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and is mevatel avelus. You find in Shiltes the Rabachoy in Parshas Chai Yisora Shilta Tezvov, Birom, Tzorch Atzeres, Birom Tzorch, Atzeres Bizman Hazeh, Tiyoim Echod Hu, V'Rosh Hashanah, V'Yom Kippurim, Nami Mevatle Gezerah Zayin, I Loi Olo. They want to know whether Shavuos Bizman Hazeh, it's Yom Echad, the Shavuos is like Shiva because of the Tashlumim that you have by Shavuos. But Bizman Hazeh, there's no Tashlumim, there's no Korban. Okay? And Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim, are they Mevatel Gzeira Shiva or lo? Mi amrinin regel the have shiva mivato gzeir shiva. Aval hani dechad yoimo inon kishabes domi. Although Shabbos einig hu dichsim be. Aval hani kiven di ispuhu simcha. There is the simcha, which I would tell you is the simcha, which is mechlal. Ki golem domu umafsikin. So it means that, and how do you put, the question is so good, it's like it's magic. Where does this come from? How do you know that in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur that there is Avelus, that there is a mitzvah simcha? How do you know such a thing? So I think the source of this is Halacha Sefer Halachas Gedolos. In Hilchos Halachas Gedolos, Simcha Aleph, Hilchos Ovel, in my dish is the Omid Reish Mem Daled. The Kaimalon Halacha Rabban Gamliel. The Snan Rabban Gamliel Loimer. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim Kirugolim. My Taimo Hukshu Kol Hamoadim Fulon Zelazeh. There's a Hekish, and with this Hekish, the Drash, this Kol Mene Simcha. The idea of Golim, it's not a regel. So there's no simcha of Kol Shlomim, of Shalmei Simcha. But you can have all of them the same as the simcha, which is Machlal. Anoshim B'roile, Noshim B'roile. So this Bahag is beautiful. So you see both the Bahag, and the Ram is not, you see this idea in Kadmonim. You see in the Shiltais this idea that there is Simcha both on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and you see from the Bahag that how does Ram Gamliel get this Simcha? It's from a Hekish. It's all in the same parsha in Emo. All I can tell you that the fact that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur Amavatal Avelis is no raya that is a mitzvah simcha on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And one can make a case that, for example, like the Ramban that works with the Yerushalmi, that Meika Dedina, Shabbos also should mevatel Avelis. But since if you're going to say Shabbos is mevatel Avelis, it would be antithetical to the institution of Shiva. It ain't Shiva but Shabbos. So mainly Shabbos is not mevatel. But Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, which are like Shabbos, they also will mevatel because it's not antithetical to the institution of Shiva. The Ramban Teres Odem Shara Ovel. Inyan Shabbos Yom Tovim. When Gamliel saw the Af Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim Kirugolim Hein, the whole Yom Tovim Mafsikin V'en Oilen. They're Mafsikin not Oiler. The time of the Shabbos Oiler Mishum She'ein She'im Omu Mafsik Tafsik Lo Matzino Avela Shiva. So basically, Shabbos is the same with Golem, but just that you would not have a Shiva b'lei Shabbos. Because it's not antithetical to the institution of Shiva. It's only a one-time thing. It's not every week. If you say that Shabbos is Mavatal, you'll be antithetical to the institution of Shiva. But it's not so. in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So there's no guy from the Ramban that there is this element, deraisa, through a drosha, whatever, of Simchas Yontiv on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And maybe Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur like Shabbos, and it's still Mevatel Avelis. Because there is Onik Shabbos, which we know, according to Shama, Onik Shabbos will be Mevatel Avelis, and there's Onik Shabbos on Yom Tiv. As the Ram says in Perek Vov Halacha Tezayin, Vilrus Yom Tiv, Kishem Shemitzvah L'chabed Shabbos Ula'anga Kach Kol Yom Tovim Shenem V'Liktosh Hashem V'Chubot V'Chol Yom Tovim Nema Behen Mikoi Kodesh. That's it. So there's Oineg on Yom Tiv, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So once it's Oineg, you have to know what it means on Chobot, maybe Chais. Yom Kippur, we have to know. But the whatever Simcha is, or whatever Oineg, Mevatel Avelos. But not because of Simcha. Now, here's also interesting. Question is, what about Noshim? I would suggest that Noshim are only obligated in the mitzvah of Simcha that's Ksum B'Torah. But the mitzvah of Simcha, which is a drasha, they might not be obligated. The Rambam in Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Basimcha Amur B'Golim, He Shiyakiv Shlomim. V'chulei, V'noshim Chayov is a mitzvah zu. However, the mitzvah, which is only Mechlal, Noshim Petulis, and that's the Rambam, the Lashon Rambam in Perek Vov, Vilrus Yontiv Locha Yud Ches, Keitzar Ketanim, Noiselem Kloyos Ve'Egoizim, Umigdonis, V'anoshim Heinen Lohen Begodim B'Tashitim, Noi Kfi Mamoinoi, V'anoshim Oichel Bosel V'Sheisen Yain, Shein Sichel Bosel, Sichel V'Yain. So Noshim Kleiner Lohen is mashma that the Noshim are Chayiv, he's Mechayiv, he's Baal B'Samcha. So we understand that there can be such a chiyuv, but why it should be certainly requires a bill. But this illustrates the difference. Now, there's a mitzvah l'sameach umlolim, the people, the downtrodden people in society. In the Ika mitzvah, which is lecho babosakochim, if you eat bosakochim and you don't invite the umlolim, it's not mevatel mitzvah, it's an eino mitzvah gemura. But however, the mitzvah which is mechlal is not a mitzvah at all if you're not mesameach acherim. It's a very important thing to keep in mind in Yom Tov. If you're not mesameach the umlolim, there's no mitzvah at all. And it's called Simchas Kreisa. In the Ika mitzvah, it's not a mitzvah gemura. In the mitzvah, which is only a drosha, the michlal, it's not a mitzvah at all. Now, listen to the difference in Lashonis. The Rambam in Hilchos Chagiga, Perek Beis Halacha Yudaled, Kish Yizbach Odom Shalmei Chagiga, V'Shalmei Simcha, Lo Yeh Oichel, Hu Ubonov, V'Ishtoi Bilvad, V'Yidme Shiase Mitzvah Gemura, it's a complete mitzvah, El Chayiv L'Samech Ho'aniyah Mulolim, Shenem V'Alevi Ager V'Yosem V'Almona, Machal HaKol Mashke, U'mi She'ochel Zvochel, V'Lo Ysim Samach Elu Imoy, Olo Kos Nema, Sivchem Kolechem Onim Lohem, Kolochel Yitmu Tamu, Ki Lachmom Lenafshom. So L'Cheira, the Ram says it's not a mitzvah gemura. But when it comes to Hilchos Yontif, when he's talking with the mitzvah, which is Mechlal, he says in Perek Vov Halacha Yudches, Ukishu Oichel V'Shoise Chayv Lahachal Agel Yosem L'Amona Im Shar Haniyam Lolim Avul Mi Shenoel Dlosis Dalsis Beisoy Mchatzeroy V'Oichel V'Shoise Hu Bona V'Yishtoi V'Eino Machil U'Mashkel Aniyim U'Lamoi Nefesh Ein Zo Simchas Mitzvah. It's not Simchas Mitzvah. El Simchas Kreso means nothing. That's Pashas, I think. Ein Zo Simchas Mitzvah, Simchas Kreso. So you need Aniyim Umlolim, the downtrodden, to Mesamech, and otherwise no mitzvah at all. Ulchalik, the Ram says, let's go back to Lashon Rambam. Ulchalik Peiros Umine Mesika, Lektanim Ulnoshim. Pash the Rambam is mashma, the Boso and Yain and Levishis Begodim Chadoshim came off for men. That's the Lashon Rambam. Umizeh umehen lechol boso biyom tov l'shos yain v'lubosh begodim chadoshim u'lechalik peiros u'minei misika l'ktanim l'noshim. So in noshim is only ktanim is minei misika in peiros, but the begodim is only men. That's the Pasha Lashon Rambam here. But the Gemara is foolish, not like that. The Begodim Chadoshim or V'Simchas Noshim. The Gemara in Psochim, Avi Psochim, Kuftesim and Aleph, V'Noshim B'Mai, Ton Rav Yosef, B'Bobel, B'Bigdei Tzivonim, B'Eretz Yisrael, B'Bigdei Pishton, and B'Meguatzim. And it's also Mishnah Torah like that. The begodim are for noshim, and mini misika are for ktanim. Lam Hilchos Yontif, Perek Vov Halacha Yudches, Ketzar HaKtanim, Noisin Lehem Klois V'Goyzim Migdonos, V'Anoshim Kleina Lehem Begodim V'Tachshitim Noim Kefim B'Moinoi. The Ram's mashma also that the chiyuv, it's an interesting thing that the chiyuv has to do, depending on how wealthy the person is, that's how much he has to give his wife tachshitim and begodim for yontif. Now the Rambam adds a new dimension over here in this mitzvah. V'lischok b'klei nigun u'l'raked b'mikdash levad. To play musical instruments and to dance in the mikdash. V'lischoik b'kli nigun, v'laked b'mikdash levad. The Rambam is that Simchas HaChag there's an element of Simchas HaChag of the Smoich B'Mikdash with Rikud and Zemer. But it's very strange. He continues, says, Vihi Simchas Beis HaShoeva. Oh, das ist Simchas Beis HaShoeva. Ze kuloi nichnas tachas omer v'smachta b'chagecha. That Simchas Beis HaShoeva also, besides Anoshim Bruim Lehen, Noshim Bruim Lehen, Ketana Bruim Lehen, is Simchas Beis HaShoeva is also Mechlal. The mitzvah Simcha. Simchas Yontif. So the question is, it's mashmer Rambam that this new idea, which was noeg bisman abayis, of another element of simcha of zemer and rikud and mikdash, is only by Sukkot, is not by Pesach or by Shavuos. So even the mitzvah simcha, what comes out, is shaykh by all Yom Tovim, Pesach and Shavuos. But this idea of simcha yisera, of rikud mik zemer, is only in Sukkot, because in Sukkot it's a Yom Tov of Yisrael Peres, as the Rambam says in the Vuchim. Yom Sukkot Asher hakavon boy asosim vasimcha hu shivas yomim b'nei shispasim ho'inyan v'yoyse b'zeh ha'perek beiro ha'torah sibosei bi'os b'cho min ha'sodeh rotzoloimo eis ha'menucha v'apnai min ha'asok mechechim. V'azocha isto v'sefer HaMitzvos shekein hoy ho'inyan mefusem b'umas meket. Oma bezeh haloshen hakobonis hakedumim hakobonis hakadmunim hakvutzim hoyu achrei isuf hatfur v'aperos ki'ilu hoyu hakobonis ibnei havocho zel l'shon. In other words, this excitement of the harvest and the successful harvest requires a certain source of simcha, and that sukkos, and that source of simcha is expressed in mikdash with rikud and zemer. Secondly, the Rambam and Mishnah Torah mentions another reason why there's a separate inyan of Simcha and Chag HaSukkos. The Rambam in Hilchos Lulav, Perek Ches Halocha Yibei, Zav Bishakol Moados, Mitzvah Smoich Behen, B'Chag HaSukkos, Hoyis Hashom B'Mikdash Simcha Yisera, Shneim V'Smachtem, Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, Shivas Yomim. V'Keitzad Hoyoisim. It's very interesting. This pasuk, the Ram says, he's describing the Sukkos Beis HaShoeva or whatever, but the pasuk is talking about lulav. Lokachtem lochem b'yom harishon creates all the kapas tomorrow man says avos. Tzangul v'neshem lokechem shivas yomim. That's what he's quoting, and that's the mitzvah of the kichas lulav b'mikdash shivas yimei chag. Ram b'hilchos lulav. So And we have to understand what the Rambam wanted. What's the relation with this pasuk in simplest place of Shoaib? Okay. The no poshit, that this Canaan and they used to dance, and few people played the musical instruments, but everyone witnessing and being happy witnessing this is all simcha. You don't have to dance and sing; you just be part of the festivities. Next. זה כולו נכנס תחזומוי, ושמחת בחגך. ומה שישחי מהם יויסה, שסייס היין לבד, כי הוא מיוחד בשמחה. So Ram makes a big deal that something about Simcha Zayin, Veloshan, כמו פסוחים, חי בון משמח בונו בני ביסוי, ברגל, במה משמחם ביין. שאוממו, Tanya Rabbi Yudin Beseira Oimer, Bezman Shabbesim Mishkayim Simcha Babosa, Shenem Vezavach Shlomim V'Chalta Shom, this passing Ha'evo, V'Samachta, Achshav Shein Simcha El B'Yayin, Shenem B'Yayin Samcha Levav Enosh, V'Chule. V'Omu. Okay. See here. The Rambam takes the whole portion that is what's going on, what's he bothered by? Miyuchad, Yayin, Das, Jens. The Rambam takes the whole portion that is mitzvah simchos yontif, not only achilus bosa, but also shtias yayin. But he asks the question, if so, why is the Gemara that he says that simcha is behind bedafka? Because he says, Chai bon nesamech bon b'nei beisoy b'regel b'ma mesamchim b'yayin. What's so special about yayin? So that the Ram says, he answers, Umash is Chai mehen yosef shiyas yayin levad ki hu yosef miyuchad b'simcha. It's not to the exclusion, it's just that it's special. There's a separate kiyum, a special kiyum in it. Next. Now, okay. When it says, Bizman Azeh, he says, Achshov ain't simcha b'yayin. That's Bizman HaMikdash. Achshov ain't simcha b'yayin. V'yayin shnem alvayim zavach vav enoish. This is difficult because how can it be that Bizman Shabbesim which no simcha v'bosa shlomim, the drasha exists the Hein Bizman Beisam English, Hein Shalom Bizman Beisam English, Hein Simcha v'bosa kochim is very difficult. We have to understand what's going on here. Now, okay. Okay, we'll pick up here. We'll pick up the next mitzvah, Mitzvah next week, to the mitzvah of Akovas, Korban Pesach. That's all.